final speaker for the afternoon, Devine. She's our Microsoft guru. She's been coming to the CoMuseum for years now. They're a sponsor. She's also a member of the advisory committee of the CoMuseum. And she will talk about the well-being of the workforce, which is something we should be discussing and thinking about ourselves. You know, we should wear the mask first before we help somebody next to us. So Catherine's talk, which is pre-recorded, is balancing productivity and well-being in cultural institutions, focusing on the employee experience. She will be with us for the Q&A. She's here.
My name is Catherine Devine, and welcome to CoMuseum 2022. Sorry to not be able to join you today in Athens. Certainly very disappointed about that. I'm actually recording this from Barcelona, which is another lovely place in the area. So today I am back again this year and want to talk about the theme of this year's conference is all about well-being, healing. There's a lot of lessons learned from the pandemic, and as we start to come out of the pandemic this year, and I think the first time that we've had this back at the Bernanke Museum, so that's exciting. So we want to talk today about what have we learned from the museum, and what have we learned around how to best look after staff and best look after the experience that they went through with the pandemic, and also the shift to hybrid work. What does that really, we're still very much in a learning phase. I'm going to talk today about the experience at Microsoft. So Microsoft has done a lot of research in this space, is very focused in this space. I want to share some of that, but also talk about how Microsoft has released this into the marketplace as well. So just to recap who I am, Catherine Devine. I work at Microsoft's headquarters in Seattle, Washington in the US, and I'm the Global Business Strategy Leader for Libraries and Museums, which means that I spend 100% of my time focusing on the world of museums and libraries and how technology helps further their missions. So we saw in the last 3 years just how much we have shifted to hybrid work. In fact, it's very much night and day between the experience that we saw before the pandemic in 2019 and before, and what we're seeing now. As we're starting in different parts of the world to emerge into coming back into an office, or really more of a hybrid environment where we're both working at home as we're running around the world and also in the office, how do you make that shift? And what does that really mean for the implications of work and the stress that creates? So we're going to talk to this conference about healing and how we can protect our staff and protect ourselves. And I love technology, and I hope I've got some really interesting things to you to show that I think personally are quite innovative and have had a really positive impact on my experience as an employee at Microsoft. So one of the things that we know is that with the shift to remote work is that people are feeling far less connected to their team. But we also know the challenges of everyone being in the office together. And sometimes that's just not practical. Actually, for me, my team is all around the world. My boss is actually based in Ireland while I'm based in Seattle. So this idea of not being connected is a real thing. And burnout is real. It's real. I feel it myself. Everybody feels it. But also, everyone's worrying about retention of talent and skills development. And as well, people are spending a lot of time just looking for things. I can attest to that. I must have spent, in my first years at Microsoft, a significant amount of time in the fire hose, which is learning Microsoft and how it works and just finding what you need when you need it. So we know that employees are stressed, and we know that we want to create a better environment, but how do we actually do that? And so we're going to get into that in a little bit. So we also know that the success of an organization is directly impacted by the employee experience. So we've focused on customer experience for years. We've focused on visitor experience. We haven't necessarily focused as much on what is the experience of an employee and what does that do in terms of investing in that, in terms of good quality of a work experience and work-life balance, and just a generally holistically rounded team, which is neither not working too much or too little, but is being very productive and adding value, that we know that that directly attributes to organizations achieving their mission. In this particular case, their particular research was focused on profitability, but in the nonprofit space and in the museum space, we want to talk about how this helps achieve mission, because it's the same thing. But we also know that highly engaged employees are also employees that stay. Happy employees, it probably makes complete sense. Happy employees are the employees that stay and help contribute to the mission of the museum. Right now, we think that the research suggests that maybe only 15% of employees worldwide across all industries are actually engaged at work. And clearly, what does that tell us about the ability to achieve the goals of the organization, but also just the general happiness of people? People who are not engaged aren't happy people. How can we make the world happier? So, what we've also found is that the goalposts have shifted, so to speak, and employees are now very much deciding whether something is worth it to them to continue with a role. And particularly with all of the challenges of the pandemic, which people are still coming out of, it's still traumatic on a number of levels. But 53% and more of this, in this survey, 53% of employees said that they were more likely to prioritize health and well-being over work than before the pandemic. Before the pandemic, and in certain cultures, it was, work, work, work. That's now changed, and we saw that with the Great Resignation as well. I'm not sure that was referred to in Greece, but in the US and other parts of the world, referred to it as the number of people who just said, I'm done with doing remote work. This is a horrible experience. It is a horrible experience. And I'm going to prioritize, there's more to life, basically. So Microsoft looked at a number of things. It has a very strong culture of looking after its employees. It's one of the reasons I work there. It's one of the reasons I enjoy working there. I've worked in many companies over many years in many different industries, and certainly I say that it authentically values its staff and looks after them. And so, we hear a lot about this, some things like back-to-back meetings, too many meetings, back-to-back meetings, people working all hours of the day and night, people being on call 24/7, not enough time to just sit and focus. And so we all say, well, how can we deal with that? And, really there hasn't been tools to deal with this, but there is now. And I've been using them actually for a number of years now at Microsoft, and they're getting better and better. And I really want to share here some of the ideas, even if these are not things that you necessarily want to use this tool for, that's perfectly fine. But it gives you an idea about how you can look at things that will actually benefit the role of employees. So one is, how much time is managers spending with them? What is the quality of meetings? And so you get this idea that in the flow of work, what we call the flow of work, lots and lots of signals are coming together. And we talk a lot about just generally data insights. What do data insights at an aggregated, anonymized level tell you about how an organization functions? It also tells us, data insights tells us lots of other things about the organization that are not about the staff. But how can we do that? So let's go through some examples. So one is this idea of giving personal insights. So how does it give me as an individual insights into what I need to do today? What have my patterns been over the last month? Have I been spending a lot of time working outside of working hours? Yes, but because it tells me and keeps me focused on this, and because it is reinforced at Microsoft that you should not be doing that, then I become much more aware, and then I'm also feels like it gives me permission to log off at the end of the day. So the idea of personal insights, we're going to go a little bit deeper on that. Manager insights. So this is about managers looking at their whole teams and the patterns in their teams, and what does this tell them? Because they get measured at Microsoft around how well they manage their teams. We have a motto for managers, which is model, coach, and care. And so their performance there is really important, and getting insights into how well they're doing there is such as things like, are they bothering their staff outside of hours? They're measured against that. Leader insights, which is the whole idea of looking at an organizational level. What are the patterns at an overall organization level, and what does that tell you? So I'm going to skip past this just because I want to be conscious of time and get you to some real things. So let's take a look at this one. So this is a personalized insights. It's just we're going to go much deeper in the workshop that is being held on Thursday, December 8th. But I just want to give like a passing sort of overview of the sorts of things. So one is, what we have here is, if you can just see my little pen here, it's like a tracker of how do you feel today, and it allows you to track your mood over time. You can track it multiple times a day if you want. You can track it once, or you can choose not to track it at all, but it gives you an idea about how you're feeling, and also, frankly, it gives insights into the organization about how you're feeling as an individual. Focus time is big. We get 2 hours a day that we are allowed to just block our calendars off for focus time. You have no meetings. You can do what you like, but the intention is that's when you catch up on your email. That's when you just do deep work, thinking, writing. That's what I spend time doing, research, and 2 hours a day. And if you're not doing it, it tells you, and it gives you a pattern over time as to how much you did it, and it automatically schedules it on your calendar. You don't have to go and find the time. It goes and automatically does it. It encourages you to take a break. Here is this idea of take a breather break. It encourages you to take a break periodically. At the end of the day, just 5 minutes before the end of the day, which is roughly 5 minutes to 5 p.m. in the afternoon, which is the end of our day in the United States, it's going to ping you and sort of suggest that maybe you want to start to wrap up for the day. I love that. And also allows you to send praise to colleagues and things like this. And this is kind of in the flow of work. This is within Microsoft Teams. So Microsoft Teams, if you're not familiar, is both a video conferencing platform, but it also does more. There is so much more that it does, and we're going to cover that in the workshop, but I'm giving this idea of just in the flow of work, just reminding you to take a break, to wrap up early, to get your focus time. There's also some meditation time, some great background ambient music in there as well. Then we can go to, what does a manager see? Well, a manager is expected to be spending time with their teams. That's why they're a manager. And so it does things like set no meeting days for the team. So the manager can just declare that a certain day is a no meeting day. We actually usually have those around once a month. And the expectation is that on that day, nobody's going to schedule an internal meeting with somebody else. And so you can just get like really dedicated focus time. I love it. But also it keeps track of when you had your last one-on-one. And when the next one is scheduled, to make sure that managers are investing time with their teams. Now, I actually use this. You can declare anybody as your team. So I have a very matrix team, and so I actually use this to put people I collaborate with frequently in. So it just keeps reminding me of when I've last met with them. And then we also have at an organizational level, what does this tell you about how people are spending time in meetings? Because this is the greatest complaint, is how people are spending time in meetings. Is it really, really long meetings? Is it meetings that are, short and to the point? But, everyone says that they're in back-to-back meetings and they're in meetings all day. But what does this tell us at an aggregate level? So this is not an individual level, an aggregate level. What does this tell us about how people are feeling? So at an aggregate level, managers are also measured based on what we call a pulse survey. So it does a pulse survey regularly that talks about how do you feel about the organisation. You will do it at least twice a year, and then they measure the trends over time and measure trends on a specific, and it's completely anonymous. But managers with enough staff will see and be measured on their trends as to how well they're treating their staff. But you can also get this idea of overall employee well-being. So this is just such a quick walkthrough of the possibilities, but we're going to go much deeper in the workshop, so I hope that you can sign up for the workshop on Thursday and attend there. But I want to give you an idea that some of these things can be converted into data, so you can actually see how the organization really is as opposed to how it's perceived, and take corrective action and enforce a culture that really looks after staff. We also have some additional sort of pattern type of analysis across the entire organization. So, for example, here, this looks at, what is the mix of employees over a long period of time about how they're working. So, we have like 22% who are in that always on, which is not encouraged, by the way, who are always in that always on category. We have, in this particular example, this is a data example, right? We have 0% in low activity. This is not designed to catch people out who are working or not working, and I can see how it could be interpreted that way. In fact, it has to also go with a culture of the organization. The organization needs to embrace a certain culture that says that we want you to work reasonable hours and be reasonably engaged, not that we want to keep track of people. So it does require that trust from employees as well. We have that at Microsoft. Maybe other organizations don't. But I want to give you some idea about how analytics here can really help you with that process of how do you look after your staff. I don't have time to go any further today, and unfortunately it's getting really dark. Sorry about that. But I do hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. I do hope you'll join the workshop tomorrow. And I look forward to all seeing you back in Athens sometime in the future. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Here she is.
Hi.
This was an excellent presentation. Hi. You still in Barcelona?
Nice to see you again, Sophia.
Still in Barcelona?
I am still in Barcelona, but the sun's back now. You can see. I didn't get stuck.
Great. Do you have any questions for Catherine? I'm curious to understand, how does this program understand the effectiveness of a meeting other than how long it took? Does it pick up keywords, for example, like yes, we found it, solution, things like that? How does it work?
It does actually, and there's so much in here, I didn't cover it. I only scratched the surface of what is possible. One of the things it does is, as the meeting ends, is it actually has a very, very quick survey. Yes, I realize another survey, we're all survey out, but another survey that was like, how would you judge the effectiveness of this meeting? And you're putting your opinion as a participant, and then that gets aggregated over time. And it's, we're measured on things like, did we have an agenda? Did it achieve its goals? Was the right, did you feel that the right pace? Those kinds of things.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? Eleni has a question.
Hi, Catherine. It's nice to see you even virtually. Thank you for the presentation. A quick question. Does Microsoft offer training to museums and libraries that want to use these tools? It sounds a bit complicated, easy as an outcome, but it also sounds a bit complicated on how to really use it daily with your team. Do you offer any trainings? Do you plan to offer trainings for museums and cultural organizations?
We actually offer trainings on the product, how to set it up, how to think about it, and part of that will cover culture, the culture that is needed to make this work, because you can see how it could be used for good or for bad, right? Depending on the culture of the organization. So you don't want to become Big Brother. That's not our intention. So we do offer that. However, I would suggest that it probably needs to be in collaboration with, human resources team or some sort of leadership team focused on what's the culture that they want to encourage and set up. So I wouldn't just treat it as a technology that you implement without also having the right sort of policies in place and culture that you want to create. So we probably don't cover that as much because that's not an area of expertise. But I think, but absolutely, we offer trainings in it. Yes.
Thank you. I think we'll close it for the afternoon. Thank you very much, Catherine.
Thank you.
Everybody who's registered, whoever is registered in the workshop will have the opportunity to discuss it in more detail tomorrow with you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.